PSP September Wellness Month Series number 3. It is the last of the September series, but clearly not the last of PSP's event. So my name is Michael Blanche-Brun. I'm the virtual program coordinator for MFS Europe. So I'm not the subject matter expert today. I will leave that over to Bertrand Vittecoq and Manon Desjardins. But today I'm simply acting as your virtual coordinator. So that basically means I'm helping you all if you have any technical difficulties, and I will be monitoring the chat because sometimes when presenters present, they don't see the chats and the questions we have. Another reason I'm monitoring the chat is because this session is recorded. So if you don't feel comfortable asking a question, leave it in the chat and I'll read it aloud for you. But I know that these eager speakers are happy to answer your questions and support you the best way that they can. So please do interact. The goal of this presentation is to have an open discussion. So of course, Manon and Bertrand will start beforehand explaining some main subjects, and then it will be an open discussion for all. So today's subject matter expert is Nutrition Navigators, a guide to help create healthy habits. And if you do have questions later on, because sometimes after a presentation, that's when we remember questions, I have left PSP's contact info in the chat. So it's Bertrand and Felix. Depending where you are in Europe, you are assigned to one of them. If you're not sure, contact one of them. And if you're not in the right spot, they'll send you to the right one. And I'm sure they'll be happy to answer all of your questions. So that's all I have to say for the moment. I'll let you guys with Bertrand and Manon, but I'd like to thank everybody for being here today, and let's have a great session. Over to you, Bert.
Thanks, Nikki. So to kind of close off our wellness series for this month of September, we figured out it was a good opportunity to address kind of like the one other big pillar of your wellness, which is what you eat, what you consume. So who better to ask than our very own Manon, who I'll let her introduce herself, but she was a dietitian in the past, so I'm sure she has a lot of knowledge that she'll be happy to share with us. And just as a quick reminder, I'm guessing, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Manon, but the presentation today is going to be in English, but we're both also bilingual. So if you want to ask a question in French, on peut toujours changer, donc comme ça. Over to you, Manon.
Well, hello, everybody. Like Bertrand said, my name is Manon. I studied nutrition quite a while ago, and I worked in that field for about 10 years before moving to Europe. So I worked in a clinical setting, but also in the community health setting. And after moving to Europe, I also did a specialization, a postgrad diploma in sports nutrition. So I'm very well founded with I have a very good foundation. Mind you, anything that would be, I'm not up and about with all the new phases and all of that, but I think when it comes to nutrition, the most important things is the foundation. The foundation remains. There are always new research that come out, but essentially the roots stay rooted, if I should say so. I would like to say that today is an open discussion, so we can we're going to talk about what I feel are my 5 top 10 tips when it comes to eating a well-balanced diet. Know that it's an open discussion, so I'm going to talk about what I feel are important for me and what's worked for me and for many of the clients that I've worked with in the past. But please put in your own input as what your visions are, what works for you. I would like this to be a discussion first and foremost. So today the agenda is we'll talk about my 5 top tips, and we'll just leave it up for discussion. So my main tip would be variety. So if you move on to the next slide, I guess, please. The variety is key. When you look at your plate of food or foods that you're eating, look at having foods that have a lot of color. Usually foods with the most color have the most nutrients in them. So I've heard a lot of people say, look like the colors of a rainbow and try to have many colors on your plate. So when you look at your plate, it should look something like this, with about half of your plate is produce, vegetables and fruit, and then a quarter of your plate, or roughly a quarter, would be your grains, and then the other quarter would be your protein foods. And then, of course, a little bit of dairy in there also. When you also need to keep what you're eating interesting, because if you're taking a lot of effort to prepare your food, and you're not interested in eating it, then chances are of you eating it is not there. So make sure that whatever you're preparing for yourself, that you're going to be interested, you'll be inclined to eat it. And to keep it interesting, look for new recipes. We're bombarded all the time with new recipes online, or go on Google, go on different websites. There's right now, I think it's cooking at home. I think that's a phase right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm seeing a lot of feeds online through social media about people trying different things at home, and just explore. And the more you do that, the more you'll get to know what works well together. So look for new recipes, be inspired by things that you see online, and try it. And sometimes you may say, oh, that wasn't very good, but probably most of the time you're going to be very impressed with what you've created. And then you'll be more inclined on trying new things. Yes, Bertrand, step in.
Yes, well, I just wanted to add on my own experience to this point, because again, like you said, variety is key, and that kind of ties in well with what we talked about last week. We talked about the fact that I like to make sure that my meals are as colorful as possible, and what helped me out was kind of switching my focus. Instead of, for a long time, I was always focusing my meals around the protein, and I'm okay with preparing proteins, but now if I look at the produce as the center of the meal, well, that kind of makes it so I can be a little bit more creative with what I'm cooking. And especially here in Europe, everything is in season. If you go to different marketplace for that European experience, you get to see a lot of fresh veggies, fresh produce, and it's interesting because it's always going to be different. Obviously, it can be a little bit intimidating when you see something that you've never seen before and you don't necessarily know how to prepare it. But it's a good opportunity to be like, hey, let's look it up online. I have this, whatever it is. It's fresh, it's colorful. Let's try something.
And I think we've all heard the saying before, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, I remember I used to say, well, eating a variety of foods on a daily basis may help to keep the doctor away, right? There's no real miracle food. Every different food that you eat will provide its own nutritional benefits. Sometimes some more than others, of course. I think that's been well established, but by eating different foods every day, you're making sure that you're getting the nutrients that you need, especially if you're being careful and trying to watch how much you do eat. So make sure that you get a good variety. Eating in season will also permit you to get the most out of your food, because we've all picked up our broccoli, I guess, back in Canada. Here, not so much. It doesn't apply so much. But in Canada, pick a broccoli in January and it's all come soft because it's no longer fresh. Well, a lot of the nutrients are now gone from that vegetable, right? So by eating in season, making sure your food is fresh, you're getting the most from it. And in Europe here, we have that opportunity where, like Bertrand said, food is fresh. On that though, when you get home after your grocery, and I'll touch on that later, I guess, but making sure you ready your food so that it stays fresh. But in the winter, when you can't find fresh food, frozen is just as good, because frozen, the food were, most of them flash frozen. They're picked up and they're frozen within the same day. So they've kept most of their nutritional value. As long as you don't overcook them or don't to boil them too much, then you're retaining most of that nutritional value. And this, another one of my top tips is prioritizing meal planning. Nowadays, we all lead busy lives. We're at work, and then we get home and we have the evening life, right? So prioritizing planning your meals becomes very important. And you need to include planning time into your grocery time. So let's say you do your groceries on Saturday morning, or whenever you do it. Make sure that you take at least 1 hour or some time to plan out your meal, so that when you go to the store, first of all, it's going to be quicker because you have your list, right? So plan that time. And when you're doing your meal planning, involve your family, or involve, if you're going to have people over to eat, involve them too and see what they would like to eat. And that would help to inspire you also as to what you're going to help prepare. Again, check the flyers. Doesn't apply as much here because food is a lot more affordable, but checking the flyers once you're back in Canada is going to be very helpful, especially at the cost food has gone up to. So check the flyers, and then you'll see whatever you see. You might be inspired to say, oh, I haven't done this recipe in a long time. I'd like to do it again. And then make your list of what you need. Stick to that list when you're at the grocery store. That's key. And try to go pick up your groceries when you're in a good state of mind. You're well rested, you're not too hungry. Because if you go when you're at the end of the day, when you're maybe too tired or very hungry, it'll be harder to stick to the plan that you had initially put up for yourself. And also, when you get home after grocery shopping, especially if you go and do a big shop, prepare your fruits and vegetables when you get home. So let's say you plan to do, I don't know, a stir fry, or plan to do a sauce or whatever. Cut up all your vegetables, cut up all your fruits so that they're ready. And having those already ready in the refrigerator also in the evening when you're hungry, and you already have some cut up vegetables or fruit in the fridge, you might be more inclined on picking those up to eat those.
I see there are a couple questions in the chat. Are you okay if we take them right now, Manon? Yeah? I see Josette have your hand up. Go ahead.
Manon, what do you think about those HelloFresh and Cook It and all of, I can't remember, but I want to know what you think about those, those prep meal you receive.
Food subscriptions.
Yeah,
box.
The food boxes, you mean?
Like, sorry, Josette, I'm taking over you. Go ahead.
Vas-y. Yeah, no, HelloFresh and Cook It. Those one you order, it come at home and it's all in the bag. Everything, all the ingredient is in the bag, and you just cook it.
I've never used that, but from other people that I've known use it, I think they use a lot of fresh ingredients. Which is good. And I think if anything, it's going to give you ideas of what to do in the future as well. So sometimes when you're lacking inspiration, that's a good way to go and be inspired again. And for some people, this works very well. I know those types of programs can be quite expensive for larger families, but some you do what you got to do to, if that's what you need to be inspired and cook a healthy meal plan and healthy meals, then yes, absolutely participate in those things. Bertrand also has.
Yeah, I don't know if it's old hand, Bert, or
yeah, no, it was kind of to add on to. Well, at first I had something to say about like the meal planning portion, but I also wanted to chime in on the food delivery service. The food prep food boxes, however you want to call them. Because I've also used them in the past, and I've seen they're definitely fun. And my biggest thing is if you can get they always offer promotional codes, and if you have a few kind of reputable like food box subscriptions, and you get that initial like, okay, get 20 meals for the price of 10. Like, yes, it's gonna give you more ideas for new recipes, and oftentimes they have the recipes printed out on like good quality paper. You can just put it in a binder and keep them for later, and then it costs you like half the price that it would typically cost you. And if you want to stay with it, you can always do that. But I'm the type of just like, okay, I have a couple of recipes, I'll cancel the subscription, and then if I want to do them again, I can do them in the future, or even like bounce from one food subscription to the other. So like 1 month you try one, and then you do another one because they also have another promotion. So if the cost associated with that is a barrier, that could be one way to navigate it. And then after trying like 3 or 4, you can make an idea as to which one is best for your taste. And then you also have a binder full of cool recipes. So that's always fun. Yes, Josette.
I will add that I've been trying this. I wanted to know just what people think about this. But I found that on our side, in my family, we waste less food when we're using this. And my 15-year-old daughter is more inclined to help if the recipe is already, all the ingredients are there. So it's kind of easier. And she's learning also to mix certain ingredient with the other one. And it's a discovery for me each time. I said, oh, I never thought that we can mix those two things together. But yeah, so far I have great experience with it.
Yeah, it's very convenient because some will just give you the whole, like, let's say you have like onions, you have like produce, they'll give them to you whole. But some subscription boxes, if like you're really time is a constraint, they can also prepare the produce for you, and they send it. It's in a little bag or a little Tupperware, and then you can just open it and dump it for whatever step.
Another point.
Yeah.
There are actually some grocery stores locally, like I know the Jumbo does, for example, I think Brève as well, will sell you the meal kits in grocery store too, with the instructions and everything. You just Google translate the instructions.
That's
I've done that a few times too.
Yeah, cool.
I've seen those at Albert Heijn also, where you have mixes of everything's ready there for you, and you just need to follow the recipe, and your ingredients are all there. So one meal. Another way to vary your diet too is if you're you can prepare meals with friends and share recipes, like do a double of your recipe and maybe share with another family, so that you're cooking one night, but you have 2 meals, right? So that could be another way to maybe expand and then you get to try new things also. So as far as meal planning, I think it's quite helpful to make sure that you're not getting home tired and not know what you're going to prepare for dinner, right? So by knowing ahead of time what you're going to be preparing is really helpful that way. Another big thing is know what's in your food. I know in Germany it's a little bit more complicated, or in the Netherlands or in Europe, I guess, because we don't quite understand everything that's in the ingredients, but we have wonderful tools now. I think most people will have a phone with them when they go grocery shopping, so you can use their wonderful apps to be able to translate what the ingredients are. One important thing to know is that ingredients are listed in order of weight. So if we see here on the label we see enriched flour. That's the first ingredient. It means in that product, what's the most prominent thing is enriched flour. After that, there's sugar, and then we have oil. But if you look after the oil, we see light molasses. That's your 4th ingredient, right? Because all the other words are what's in the margarine, right? So it means that you have sugar as 2nd ingredient, but then molasses, which is another form of sugar, as the 4th ingredient. And then you have glucose, fructose, and that's all part of that. But sometimes, like if you put your 2nd and your 4th ingredient together, maybe it means that that's probably now sugar is now your 1st ingredient. So look at your list and look for duplications. So anything that ends in OSE, like glucose, fructose, galactose, OSE equals sugar. So think of it that way. There are many other ways that companies try to trick us a little bit into thinking there's less of those ingredients we don't really want in the product. So by knowing what those are, then it helps. So look for duplications, either duplication in types of fat, duplications in different forms of sugar, that kind of stuff, to make sure that you're not getting too much. When it comes to choosing your foods, also is know your limits and choose wisely. If you know that if you have potato chips in the house, you can't resist them, then don't have potato chips in the house, right? Only just don't buy them. Or I sometimes used to out of sight, out of mind. So for me, my trick used to be, well, if you know me, you know I'm not very tall. So I would put things on the highest cupboard so that it was an extra effort for me to go and get it. So I needed to think about it twice before actually picking up that food. I see Josette has something. Oh, we don't see Josette anymore. But so and
I'm buying those. Look,
She's showing her oven baked chips.
and they're just as tasty.
Yeah, look. Huh? I'm good,
Yes.
Manon?
Yeah. A thing to watch out for, though, think about if they're removing something from a food,
Why?
they're replacing it with something else, right? I remember that was probably back in the early 2000s. The Snackwells, for some reason, they were a big phase, like the Snackwell cookies, because they said they were lower fat cookies, but they were very, very high in sugar. So sometimes your best bet is to have the real thing, but less of it, right? Like when you want an Oreo cookie, for example, you don't want a light version of the Oreo cookie, or you don't want to have something else. You want the Oreo cookie. So have it, but maybe instead of opening the bag and keeping the bag in front of you, take 2 or 3, put it on a small plate, and then put the bag away.
And
So
they're making things really difficult, sorry, Manon, because now it's so, the writing is so tiny, like you just pretend it's good because you can't freaking read anything. Like I need a, comment on appelle ça, une loupe, là.
Oh, yes, magnifying glass.
For moi,
Or-
it's my sight. I think my sight is decreasing, whatever.
Or maybe have some reading glasses in your purse so that you're ready when you go to the grocery store. Bertrand?
Yes, to add on to like the know what's in your food, I think it might just be my personality and I have a good memory, but what I also like to do is like actually look at the nutrition value tables, and then I look at it a couple of times for different brands of the same product to see, okay, what is the serving? What is that equals to? Like, what should that look like? And then I almost kind of dressed a library of like common products that I have often in my rotation, and I know, okay, well, this should be around like 100 calories, and in those 100 calories there's mainly protein or mainly fat, and that helps me like knowing what's in my food. Like, okay, I'm scanning the nutrition values for some of these items, and that brings me to the second point that I wanted to share. And I don't know if you have an opinion on it, but how relevant and how good is those Nutri-Score that we see here in Europe? Because that's like almost a fun game for me to just like look at the different products, look at the different brands, and be like, oh, I'm good if I have like a bunch of these items that are A, B, or like C, and then sometimes like see it's E, and I'm like, oh, damn it. But yeah, what's your opinion on that?
One thing to remember about those Nutri-Scores is companies pay into companies pay to have them listed into the Nutri-Score. So there could be some bias there, right? I don't know if you've seen the Nutri-Score on like pop, for example, right? Some of them are really quite biased. Like it's so always keep that in the back of your mind. If you can't think of the food in its origin, then start asking yourself questions.
Yeah, I saw, I think it was for Halloween, like a multi-pack of like individual sized chips. And depending on what flavor you have, they had different Nutri-Score. And I'm like, well, I guess I have to start just buying the Lay's paprika because those ones were B compared to like some other ones.
But the chip remains a chip, right? And the Nutri-Score could be linked to the amount of sodium in it. It could be what are their parameters for determining the Nutri-Score is one thing, and each one of them will have different I can't say that word, parameters. So always think of that. Like I don't like the idea of categorizing food into good or bad, but we all know that a potato is more in its natural shape than a potato chip, for example, right? So if they score the potato chip a B, then what is essentially the potato, right? So think of what companies have to gain into having their product listed into those types of.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Another rule that I find quite interesting is the 80-20 rule. And like I just said, I don't like to categorize foods into good or bad. Eat well most of the time and permit yourself to eat your favorite foods, because whenever we prevent ourselves from something that we like, that's when we want it, right? I don't know. I think we've all told somebody before, well, we've told a child, maybe it doesn't apply anymore with these fancy new ovens, but don't put your hand on the stove, right? What does the child do? Puts their hand on the stove. So if you tell yourself, well, I can't have that chocolate, right? Because chocolate for me is one of my weaknesses, right? So if I tell myself, I deny myself of it, then it builds and builds and builds, and I probably end up eating more of it than I would have. So if I permit myself to have a little piece of it and work the 80-20, whatever suits you best. Some people prefer to eat, have like a cheat day, or I don't like the word cheat either, but have a day where they're a little bit more lenient with themselves. Some people, it's better on the day-to-day to have a little treat at the end of the day. So find the balance that works for you. Find what works for you, and everybody's equation is going to be different, but it needs to be sustainable for you. One of the reasons that crash diets don't work is because they're not sustainable. People can do them for a short period of time, and then they end up craving what they prefer, what they really like, and then they end up not sticking with it. So find something that works for you and that's sustainable. Yes, Bertrand.
And for that rule, that 80-20, would you say, because I know it's very kind of generic and you shouldn't be thinking too much about it, but would you rather see it as like 20% of your total calorie intake, or like 20% in terms of the volume of the food that you consume, or like how would you divide it up, or is there a unit that you look for?
Not necessarily, because then it gets too complicated.
Sure.
Eating should be fun. Eating is a pleasure of life, right? It's very social. It's part of who we are. If we don't eat, we won't survive. Mm-hmm. So we need to keep it simple. So I try to get math out of the equation when it comes to healthy eating and eating a balanced lifestyle. So look more as far as you said numbers, but you said something else. I forget now.
I said in terms of like the overall volume, like yeah.
So look more at overall volume.
Okay.
Rather than the calories, because keep it simple.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I guess we're down to the last part, which is a big thing for me, is eat real food. And I've already mentioned earlier, is if you're looking at a food and you can't figure out where it came from, start asking questions as to whether you really want to be eating that food or not. And be wary of very long lists of ingredients, because food in its natural state is one. So those would be my top tips. Anybody? Yes, go, Nikki.
I was trying to clap for you instead of raising my hand, but I wanted to say thank you. Yeah, I think I did want to thank you, Manon, for your time, and Bertrand as well. But I think now we're opening the floor up if there is more questions. I'm pretty sure these two would love to answer some of the questions. So the floor is open to everyone. Feel free to ask a question. It can be in the chat as well. I'll leave you a couple of seconds in silence to see if anybody will dare.
Well, it wasn't
I just want to say thank
for...
you, Manon. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bertrand. J'ai pas levé ma main, je suis pas fine.
Moi non plus, j'ai pas levé ma main, je me suis juste lancé. Because for me, it's just a comment, so I'll get back to you really quickly, I promise, Josette. But I just wanted to say I really like the way that you said, like, eating should be fun, eating should be enjoyable, because a lot of what we see right now, it's avoid this, avoid that, restrict. And eating is part of living. Eating is part of life. One of the best things in life, in my opinion, is probably eating. It's food. So, like, just understanding that it's okay to eat. Again, that 80-20 is probably going to be really useful, especially for me. But yeah, you shouldn't be restricting too much. Just having fun with what you eat. I like that one.
And my dogs agree with this. They're barking. Sorry. So on that, I would like to share a shooter of ginger. So in the morning, I'm sharing that tip. I'm taking 2 sips of that ginger pure juice. It's hard at the beginning. The taste is pretty strong, but after a month now, I'm pretty good. So santé. What do you think about ginger?
I love ginger. Ginger is a known product to help with nausea. So I usually always have ginger with me in my purse, because there are many roundabouts in Europe. So I use them on a regular basis. And for me, it really helps. I love ginger. So keep it simple, I think, and have fun. And if you don't like a food, you don't need to eat it. I'm sure there's another one somewhere that has the same nutritional benefits than whatever you don't like. But keep trying, because eventually you may like it. That's it for me.
Well, I see that there's no questions in the chat, so I would just like to thank you, Manon, and thank you, Bert, for your time. And as mentioned, PSP's contact info is in the chat as well if you have any more questions regarding that. And also, Bert, I'd like to share the floor to you if you'd like to speak of any PSP's event coming up.
Yes, well, not necessarily coming up, but this is the last week for the Wellness Challenge. So you still have until Monday to track your all the tasks, all the little challenges in the bingo sheet, and then we'll give you like 1 or 2 weeks to submit them. And then the next challenge that we're going to be going for is going to be later in November, but it's going to be our physical activity minutes challenge. So the whole month of November, we're trying to track as many different activities as we can throughout the month and just have fun with it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Bert. So you heard it from here. Keep an eye out for more PSP events. And I'd like to thank everyone again, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye.